Thanksgiving was supposed to be my night. Not in a loud, dramatic way, not with attention or applause. Just a quiet moment I had worked toward for months. Something I planned carefully. Something I wanted to share with my family at the right time. For once, I wanted them to see me. The dining room smelled like roasted turkey and cinnamon. Plates covered the table, glasses clinked softly, and conversations overlapped in the usual warm chaos. My parents sat at the center. My younger sister, Ava, as always, had positioned herself where everyone could see her best. That part never changed. Ava had a way of pulling attention without asking for it. The right tone, the right smile, the right timing. Growing up, every holiday somehow turned into her moment. Birthdays, graduations, even small family dinners. I learned to stay quiet, but tonight was different. I had something important to announce, something that would finally shift how they looked at me. Weeks of preparation sat quietly in my bag upstairs, waiting for the perfect moment. I chose after dinner, when everyone was relaxed, when the room felt calm. I stood up slowly, my heart beating faster than I expected. Conversations began to fade as a few people noticed. My parents looked toward me with mild curiosity. This was it, the moment I had been waiting for. I took a breath and started to speak, but I barely got past the first sentence. Ava stood up, not loudly, not abruptly, just perfectly timed. She laughed lightly and placed her hand on the table, drawing every eye in the room toward her without effort. Then she said she had exciting news to share. The room shifted instantly. People leaned forward. My aunt smiled. My dad nodded for her to continue. I felt my words disappear before they even fully formed. Ava reached into her bag and pulled out a small envelope. She paused just long enough to build anticipation. Then she announced it. A major opportunity, a life-changing step, something impressive enough to pull every ounce of attention toward her. The room exploded with reactions, applause, excitement, pride, and just like that, my moment was gone. I slowly lowered myself back into my chair, my heart still racing, but for a completely different reason now. No one asked what I was about to say. No one noticed I had even tried. Ava smiled across the table, soaking in every reaction like she always did. But this time, something felt different, because what she didn't know was that I had prepared for this possibility. Not out of paranoia, out of experience. For years, she had taken moments like this from me. Tonight, I was ready. I leaned back in my chair, my expression calm, almost amused, because the spotlight she had just taken was never truly hers to keep. And before this dinner was over, I was going to take it back, in front of everyone. The applause around Ava kept going longer than it should have. My mother reached across the table to hold her hand. My father smiled in that proud, satisfied way he reserved only for her biggest moments. Even my cousins leaned in, asking questions, eager to be part of whatever story she had just placed in the center of the room. I sat quietly, watching it unfold. This scene was familiar. Too familiar. Ava spoke confidently, explaining her opportunity in detail, letting every sentence build her importance. She knew exactly how to pace it, how to pause just enough to pull people closer, how to make her words feel bigger than they were. It was a skill she had perfected over years, and tonight, she used it again. But this time, I didn't feel invisible. I felt prepared. Under the table, my hand rested lightly against my phone. The screen was dark, but everything I needed was already set, because what no one at that table realized was that I had planned this moment down to the second. Not just my announcement, her interruption too. Ava didn't steal my spotlight tonight. She walked exactly where I expected her to. Across the table, my aunt asked Ava how long she had known about this opportunity. My sister smiled, giving a vague answer that sounded impressive without revealing much. That was her style. Keep people curious, keep them guessing, keep control. But control was about to shift. I glanced briefly toward the living room, where a large screen was mounted on the wall. My father had set it up earlier for a football game. It was still connected to the house system. Connected to everything. Including my phone. The same phone resting quietly in my hand. Ava's voice continued filling the room, each word pulling more attention toward her. She was almost glowing under it, completely unaware of what was coming next. I let her finish. That part mattered. The higher she climbed, the harder the fall. When the applause started again, I finally looked up. My parents were smiling at her. No one looked at me. That was when I moved. Not quickly, not dramatically. Just a small, deliberate motion as I tapped the screen on my phone. Across the room, the television flickered. At first, no one noticed. Ava was still speaking, answering another question, enjoying the attention she had taken so effortlessly. Then, the screen lit up fully. Bright, impossible to ignore. One by one, people turned their heads. The room slowly quieted. Ava stopped mid-sentence. Confusion replaced her confidence as she followed everyone's gaze toward the screen. I leaned back in my chair, calm, composed, watching the exact moment the spotlight began to shift. Because what appeared on that screen wasn't random. It wasn't an accident. It was something I'd prepared long before tonight, and it was about to change everything. Because the moment Ava saw what was playing on that screen, she realized this wasn't her spotlight anymore. The room went silent as the television fully lit up. At first, it showed nothing more than a paused frame. A clean presentation slide with a familiar company logo sitting at the top. Subtle, professional, easy to recognize. Ava recognized it immediately. I saw the change in her expression before anyone else did. Confusion first, then something sharper, concern. My father leaned forward slightly, squinting at the screen as if trying to place where he had seen that logo before. My aunt whispered something under her breath. The attention that had been wrapped tightly around Ava just seconds ago began slipping away, exactly where I needed it. I stayed seated, my posture relaxed, my hands resting calmly on the table. The screen flickered once more. Then the video began. It wasn't loud or dramatic, just clear enough to pull everyone in. A recorded presentation, clean visuals, structured points, a voice explaining an idea with precision and confidence. My voice. Ava froze. She didn't move, didn't speak. Her body went still in a way that made the shift in the room even more obvious, because the presentation on that screen was the same opportunity she had just announced. The same details, the same structure, the same vision. Only this version had a timestamp. Weeks earlier, before tonight, before her announcement. A quiet murmur spread across the table as people began connecting the pieces. My mother looked from the screen to Ava, then back again. My father's expression hardened slightly, his curiosity turning into something more serious. Ava finally stepped forward, trying to regain control. She said something about a misunderstanding, something about how ideas can overlap, but her voice didn't carry the same confidence anymore. Not with the screen still playing, not with my voice continuing to explain every detail she had just claimed as her own. I watched her carefully. For years, she had stepped into moments like this effortlessly, redirecting attention without resistance. But this time, the moment pushed back. Because this wasn't just about timing. This was proof. The video ended on a final slide. My name. Clear. Centered, followed by the project title she had proudly announced minutes earlier. The room fell completely still. No one spoke. No one moved. Ava stood near the table, her earlier confidence gone, replaced by something she couldn't hide anymore. Exposure. My father slowly turned toward her, waiting. My mother looked stunned, and for the first time that night, every single eye in the room shifted away from Ava. And landed on me. I leaned back slightly in my chair, meeting their attention without saying a word. Because I didn't need to. The screen had already said everything. But what Ava didn't realize yet was that the video was only the beginning. because the next thing I was about to show them would prove this wasn't just a coincidence. The silence after the video ended felt heavier than anything before it. No laughter, no clinking glasses, no background noise, just a room full of people trying to understand what they had just seen. Ava was the first to move again. She straightened slightly, forcing a small smile that didn't reach her eyes. She tried to speak, to regain control, to rebuild the moment that had slipped out of her hands. She said there had to be some kind of misunderstanding. She said ideas can overlap. She said timing can look suspicious when it really isn't. Her voice sounded steadier than before, but something was missing. Conviction, because even she knew the explanation didn't match what was on that screen. My father didn't respond right away. He just kept looking between Ava and the television, his expression tightening with every second. My mother folded her hands together, clearly uncomfortable, as if she was waiting for the situation to fix itself without anyone having to confront it directly. But it wasn't going to fix itself. Not this time. I reached for my phone again. Ava noticed immediately. Her eyes locked onto my hand, a flash of panic breaking through her controlled expression. Because she understood something now, the video had not been random, and it wasn't the end. The screen behind me changed again. This time, it wasn't a presentation, it was an email thread. Clean, organized, impossible to misread. At the top sat the subject line, the exact title of the project Ava had just announced. Below it, a series of messages. My name appeared first. Sending the full proposal. Weeks ago. Attached files, detailed outlines, strategy notes, every piece of the idea laid out clearly. Then came the replies. A hiring manager, a confirmation, a scheduled meeting, dates that lined up perfectly with the timestamp from the video. The room shifted again. A quiet wave of realization passed from one person to another, because this wasn't just similar work. This was the same work. My father stepped closer to the screen, reading the details more carefully now. His expression changed from confusion to something heavier. Disappointment. My mother looked at Ava again, but this time there was no confusion in her face. Only questions she didn't want to ask out loud. Ava shook her head slightly, as if trying to reject what was in front of her. She said it didn't prove anything, but her voice lacked strength now. Because deep down, she knew it proved everything. I finally stood up. Slowly, calmly. For the first time that night, I stepped fully into the space she had taken earlier. Every eye followed me. The spotlight had returned. But this time it wasn't fragile. It was undeniable. I looked at Ava, not with anger, not with frustration, but with something far more controlled. Clarity. Because for years she had taken moments from me without consequence. Tonight, that pattern ended. And I wasn't finished yet, because what Ava didn't realize was that the next thing I was about to reveal would show exactly how she got access to my work in the first place. The room stayed locked in silence as I stood there. Ava's earlier confidence had completely faded. She kept her eyes on the screen, avoiding direct contact with me, as if refusing to acknowledge what was already clear to everyone else. But the truth sitting in front of them was only part of the story. I took a slow breath and reached for my phone again. Ava noticed instantly. This time her reaction was sharper. A step forward, a slight shake of her head, a silent warning she didn't dare speak out loud, because she knew something worse was coming. The screen changed again. This time, it wasn't polished slides or organized emails. It was raw data, login records, access timestamps, a digital trail most people at that table wouldn't fully understand at first glance. But one person did. Ava. Her face lost what little color it had left, because the system displayed on that screen was the secure workspace I used for my projects. Private. Password protected, monitored, every login recorded, every device tracked, every access point stored. My father leaned closer, trying to follow the information. My cousin whispered something about how detailed it looked. My mother simply stared, her expression tightening as the pattern slowly became visible. I let them look. I let the silence stretch. Then I pointed to a specific line. A login. Late at night, 3 weeks ago? Not from my device. Not from my usual location. Another line appeared below it. Same account, same files accessed, different device again. Ava took another small step back. Her breathing changed, subtle but noticeable, because now the story wasn't about coincidence. It was about access. Unauthorized access. I finally spoke, calm, measured. The account had been entered multiple times without my knowledge, each time targeting the same project files, the same proposal that appeared in the video, the same idea Ava had just claimed at dinner. My father's expression darkened. He didn't need to understand every technical detail. He understood enough. This wasn't overlap. This wasn't timing. This was something else entirely. My mother looked at Ava again, waiting. Ava shook her head, trying to deny it without saying the words. But the data didn't move. The timestamps stayed fixed. The evidence stayed clear. Then, the final detail appeared on the screen. The device ID registered to a home network. Our home network. The same one Ava used every day. The same one connected to her laptop. The room felt like it closed in around her. No more space for explanations. No more room for confusion. Just the truth. And for the first time in years, Ava stood in the spotlight without control over it. I watched her carefully. Not angry, not emotional, just steady. Because this moment had been building for a long time, and it wasn't finished yet, because exposing how she took my work was only half of it. What I was about to reveal next would show why she did it. No one spoke after the login records appeared. The room had shifted from confusion to something much heavier. This was no longer a misunderstanding or a coincidence people could politely ignore. It was deliberate. Ava stood frozen near the table, her earlier confidence completely gone. Her eyes moved quickly across the room, searching for something to hold on to. Support, excuses, anything. But no one stepped in this time. My father's expression had hardened into something I had rarely seen before. Not anger yet, but the kind of disappointment that builds quietly before it turns into something stronger. My mother looked torn, her gaze shifting between Ava and the screen, as if she was hoping there was still a version of this situation that made sense. There wasn't. I stepped forward slightly, keeping my voice calm. There was one more piece they needed to see. Ava reacted instantly, another small shake of her head, another silent plea, but it was too late for that. The screen changed again. This time it showed a message thread. Not professional, not formal. Personal. A series of conversations pulled from a private messaging app. The names at the top made the situation even clearer. Ava and someone else. A recruiter. The same recruiter connected to the opportunity she had just announced. My aunt leaned closer, trying to read the messages. My cousin stopped whispering entirely. Even the background noise from the kitchen had faded. Every word on that screen carried weight. The messages revealed the timeline clearly. Ava reaching out first, asking about opportunities, asking about projects that would make her stand out. Then the shift, mentions of a proposal she could present, details that matched my work, line by line, idea by idea. The recruiter responded with interest, encouraging her to submit it quickly, promising attention, promising results. Ava's replies became more confident with each message, more certain, as if the plan was coming together exactly how she wanted. My mother covered her mouth slightly, the realization finally hitting her fully. My father didn't move at all. He just kept reading. Ava tried to speak, but no words came out, because the reason behind everything was now clear. This wasn't about jealousy. It wasn't about a random mistake. It was about ambition. Ava wanted the spotlight, and she was willing to take it from me to get there. I looked at her steadily. For years she had stepped into moments like this without resistance. But tonight, there was nowhere left to step. Only the truth, and the consequences waiting behind it. But what Ava didn't understand yet was that exposing her wasn't my final move, because the next part of this night was going to decide who actually kept the opportunity she tried to steal. The room stayed frozen after the messages finished scrolling. Every detail was out in the open now: the access logs, the proposal, the conversation with the recruiter. Each piece fit together too cleanly to ignore. Ava didn't try to deny it anymore. She couldn't. Her silence said more than any explanation ever could. My father finally stepped forward, his voice low but firm. He asked one question. "What happens now?" It wasn't directed at Ava. It was directed at me. Because for the first time in this situation, I wasn't just the person who exposed the truth. I was the one who controlled what came next. I glanced briefly at the screen, then back at him. The recruiter had already seen my original submission. The timestamps, the email confirmations, the scheduled meeting. Everything had been documented long before tonight. Ava's version had only been sent days ago, after the access logs, after the messages, after she believed no one would notice. My cousin shifted uncomfortably. My aunt looked down at the table. The atmosphere had completely changed from the warm holiday dinner it started as. Now it felt like a quiet courtroom, waiting for a decision. I explained the situation simply. The company had paused their decision. They noticed the overlap. They asked questions, and I answered them. Fully, with proof. Ava's head lifted slightly at that. A flicker of panic returned. Because she understood what that meant. The recruiter conversation she thought was private had already been reviewed. The proposal she thought would impress them had already been compared. The truth she hoped would stay hidden had already been exposed beyond this room. My father's jaw tightened. He didn't need to ask anything else. He understood exactly where this was going. My mother finally spoke, her voice quieter than before. She asked if Ava had lost the opportunity. I didn't answer immediately. Instead, I reached for my phone one more time. The screen behind me changed again. This time, it wasn't evidence. It was a confirmation, a formal email, my name at the top, the position, the acceptance, the start date, clear, final, undeniable. Ava's shoulders dropped slightly as she read it. Not dramatic, not loud, just the quiet realization of something slipping away completely. The opportunity she tried to take had never really been hers. It had always been mine, and now it was officially secured. I turned off the screen. The room stayed silent, but the tension had changed again. This time, it wasn't about exposure. It was about outcome, and for the first time that night, there was no confusion about who stood where. But the real moment wasn't the email. The real moment was what happened next. When Ava finally tried to explain herself, the screen went dark. For a few seconds, no one moved, like the room needed time to catch up with everything that had just happened. Ava stood still, her eyes fixed on the empty television, as if the proof might somehow disappear if she stared long enough. It didn't. My father exhaled slowly and turned toward her. The disappointment in his face was no longer quiet. It was clear now, heavy and impossible to ignore. He asked her why. Simple question. No anger in his voice, just the truth, waiting for an answer. Ava finally looked up. For the first time that night, she didn't try to control the moment. Her shoulders dropped, her posture changed, and the confidence she always carried was gone. She said she felt like she was falling behind. The words came out uneven, but honest. She said every time she looked around, someone else seemed ahead. Someone else seemed more prepared, more successful, more noticed. And in her mind, I was one of those people. The room shifted again. Not back to comfort, but into something quieter. Understanding, but that didn't erase what she did. My mother stepped forward, clearly torn between sympathy and disappointment. She said pressure didn't justify crossing a line like that. My father didn't say anything else. He didn't need to. The silence between them said enough. I stood there, listening, watching the moment unfold without interrupting. For years, I had been the one sitting quietly while Ava took the spotlight, watching, waiting, accepting the pattern without pushing back. Tonight was different. Not because I exposed her, but because I didn't let the moment pass. Ava looked at me again, this time without the usual confidence or competition, just something real. She said she didn't expect it to go this far. I nodded slightly. Neither did I, but actions have a way of carrying further than people plan. The dining room behind us was still set for a celebration that never really happened. Plates untouched, conversations unfinished. But something had changed. The balance that had always existed between us was no longer the same. My father finally spoke again, his voice steady. He said, "Trust takes years to build and seconds to break." Then he walked back toward the table. My mother followed quietly. One by one, the rest of the family moved back inside, leaving the moment behind in silence. Ava stayed where she was for a second longer before stepping away without another word. And just like that, the spotlight disappeared completely. Not taken. Not stolen. Just gone. I stood there alone for a moment, feeling the quiet settle in. For the first time in years, I didn't feel invisible. Not because I proved something, but because I finally refused to be overlooked. And sometimes, that is the only revenge that actually matters. Because the moment you stop letting people take your spotlight is the moment they realize it was never theirs to begin with.